So welcome everyone to the seventh meeting, official meeting of the Objectivism Orange County Group. Today we're going to be discussing this subject, humility, from an objectivist perspective. Now, I think those of you who are objectivists probably think you know what I'm going to say. And with that, I'm going to begin with a quote from Atlas Shrugged. I read magnum opus. Quote, "After a while, he turned, took off his coat, and sat down by the fire, apart from the others. He felt nothing but immense exhaustion. He did not listen to their talk. He heard dimly that Lillian was arguing, defending him against his mother. Quote, I know him better than you do, his mother was saying. Hank Reardon's not interested in man or beast unless it's tied in some way to himself and his work. That's all he cares about. I've tried my best to teach him some humility. I've tried all my life, but I failed. He offered his mother unlimited means to live as and where she pleased. He wondered why she had insisted that she wanted to live with him. His success, he thought, meant something to her, and if it did, then it was a bond between them, the only kind of bond he recognized. If she wanted a place in the home of her successful son, he would not deny it to her. End quote. If you observe what was going on in that scene, we don't really need to know the particulars of the characters. What's important is that the mother, whoever she is, uses the word humility clearly as a weapon against her son. Quote, I've tried all my life to teach him some humility. And notice that it's coming up in the context where he's successful. That word comes up twice, and that he is someone who is completely purposeful and absorbed in what he's doing in his life, his work, and himself, his values. And yet someone so successful, and thus so happy in this instance, is being thrown in his face that vice vampire of a concept, blood-sucking it is of the spiritual life, humility, ought to say, you shouldn't be too happy, you shouldn't enjoy yourself too much, you're not that good, be humble, reduce yourself. Who do you think you are? I don't think I have to disabuse this audience of how that is so unequivocally evil. To see the successful in life, the happy in life, those who have achieved in life, and those who have done it 10x, and then the first inclination, the first thing you want to do is take them down a size. Who do you think you are? Be humble. For this audience, and for those of you who have read Atlas Shrugged, I think you are completely disabused of that notion that humility is somehow a good thing, and in fact, it's a vice. So, what am I doing here today? Well, it is from my experience so far in life, in my good rite of 26 years, that I think I have something to say about humility, positive. That is, I think there's some kind of positive case to be made for this thing we roughly know as humility. And so therefore, what I want to do today is I want to make a case for humility, not in the way it's understood, again, this conceptual weapon that's used against those who are happy, successful, moral, to make them go down a size, but instead, a different kind of humility, something that not only is rational, but serves human life on earth. And so what I want to do today is two things. One is, I think, humility is a package deal. which means per just even the term, there are two things inside it. Two things that I think shouldn't be together. One thing is the evil stuff that I just read to you that the mother is using against her son, using humility as a cudgel against his spirit, against his morality, against his self-esteem. That's clearly evil. But there's something else in that package. There's something else that I think is positive and life-serving. And so what I want to do today is illustrate to you all what is that positive thing, that thing that I think is actually good, and take it out of the package, separate it, and give it, that second half, that positive thing, its attention in the limelight. And that's the talk today. The way I'll format today's talk, the structure, is I will be using what is called the genus method of concept formation. Genus, G-E-N-U-S. It's a philosophical term, you don't even have to get into what it is. All it is to say is that this method, the genus method of concept formation, is it's actually the genus method of definition, but it's this thing that I think is incredibly useful to determine the nature of any concept you want, to determine some kind of idea, some kind of principle, going by this four-step method to unlock and discover what something truly is in its essence. And so from this four-step method, all it is in 4 steps, very briefly. So the first step, again, this is a 4-step thing. The first step is to share with you all the concretes, the facts of reality that give rise to the thing we're interested in, called humility. The second step is to take something very close by and similar to humility. I'm going to use reverence and give some examples of that. That's the second step. The third step is to see what's similar between these two groups of concretes, these two groups of facts of one side humility, one side reverence. What's similar between those two groups, those two batches? And then the fourth final step is to say, well, what makes them different? And then what that really means is not only will we have an understanding of humility, what makes humility different than reverence, but also what makes reverence different from humility. So in a sense, we're doing 2 things in one talk. Pretty cool. But with that said, so today, again, I will be giving a positive case of what I think humility is from a rational, secular, life-serving perspective. And so doing, I'll be using this 4-step method called the genus method of definition. And in so doing, not only will we unlock, I believe, what humility is, we'll also see how objectivism, the philosophy of Ayn Rand, of course, really methodically and systematically understands a concept, an idea, a principle. What is that method to unlock it, whatever it might be? So that's it. We'll begin with the first step, which is what concretes, what examples, what facts of reality give rise to this thing that I'm calling humility? Put it another way, what things have I seen out there or have experienced out there that are real in reality that I think warrant a discussion for this thing called humility? So here's the first concrete, and I'm going to give 2 examples. The first concrete was last school year. I was Lisa Van Dam's literature apprentice. If you know me, I've probably mentioned her at least once or twice. She is my hero, and she is an educator. She has her own school called Van Dam Academy. And last year, I took it upon myself to be her literature apprentice. What does that mean? It means I sat in her classrooms and it was like a fly on the wall, and I wanted to learn everything I could from her because my life purpose is literature. So I thought, let me go to the #1 person in the universe to learn from. So when we did that, after her classes for like 15 minutes each day, we would just talk. And we would talk about not only the stuff that happened in the class, but because we're spending all this time together, we talk about our lives, stories, things like that. And so constantly every day, she was sharing with me wisdom, things within education, literature. She was sharing me stories about her family, her kids, anecdotes from her life, and I loved it all. And I wanted to soak it all up, and I didn't want to miss a single day. One day, about midway, she was telling me a story, and whatever it was, I don't even remember what the concrete story was, but whatever it was, I just had the most visceral feeling inside me, which was, oh my God, I gotta tell her about this, whatever it was. And so I did. I cut her off, I interrupted her, and I shared my story, and we kept on talking. After that instant, I asked her, oh wait, so what were you saying beforehand? She stopped, paused, and she said, I don't remember. And it was lost. And it is in that moment that I realized in future instances of that, which happened like almost immediately, that I wanted to employ something, some unnamed principle that would allow me to favor her higher valued wisdom and anecdotes than my lower valued stories, anecdotes, whatever it might be. I wanted to employ something, I didn't have the name, I didn't know what it was, but I knew I needed to employ something that would serve my life, that would allow me to get the higher values rather than cashing on these lower things that I judged to be lower, my own stories, my own contributions, whatever it was. So that's the first concrete, my time with Lisa Van Dam as her apprentice. The second concrete is, I'm just going to read it out because I think this might be familiar to some of you. The example I have is a junior architect listens while a senior architect explains a principle of structural integration. The junior architect has ideas bubbling up in his head, but withholds comment until he fully understands the senior architect's reasoning. He keeps his mind engaged, he's not passive, and later integrates what he's learned into his own thinking. He is silent about this process, not out of self-negation, but of high value focus. He's trying to get the higher thing in the moment, the senior architect's higher value that he recognizes, rather than start mulling around in his head and daydreaming about, oh, what can I do this and that, and then missing 2, 3, 4 steps of integration. And so just from these facts, these are the only 2 I want to give for the first step. You just very rudimentary, you don't have to get into it. It's just very clear the 2 things that have in common is that whoever we're talking about, Nick or the junior architect, whatever it is, whoever it is, wants to get the higher thing. But they have some lower thing that they really, in the moment, want to get out there, want to express and get off their chest. But they hold themselves back because they want the higher thing, whatever it is. So that's just the name of the first step. That's what I think some examples of humility. Now I want to give a couple of examples of I think is very close to humility, call it reverence. And the whole point, again, is to say once we have these things on the table, these 2 examples of reverence, it allows us to have a sharper, more precise, more narrow, and thus objective understanding of what we're trying to understand, humility. Because I think we already basically get it right now, but I think we can go one layer deeper. So here are 2 examples of what I think reverence is. And again, I haven't given a definition of humility. I won't give a definition of reverence until the end. We're just getting the facts. So fact 1. A medical student watches a senior surgeon perform a difficult operation. The room is tense, and every moment is deliberate. The surgeon, the senior surgeon, works with calm precision anticipating each step before even speaking it aloud. The student watching this feels a quiet surge in her chest, not from fear, but from the sheer rightness of what she's seeing before her eyes. The precision, the calm, the command of it all. It's beautiful in its certainty, this whole scene before her. And thus, as the last suture is placed and the monitors even out, she thinks, that's the standard I want to reach. Here's the second example. Someone sitting down is reading The Fountainhead. They reach the courtroom speech and pause, not to analyze it, but just to let the meaning sink in. The precision, the conviction, the clarity of Howard Ward, it all lands. He feels an inward lift, as though reminded of what human thought and integrity can be. The person closes the book, thinking for the moment, this is the sort of world that I want to live in. Period. And that's it. And so from these two examples, what I think was going on here is that they're very emotional. It's very automatic. It's a reaction to something pretty awesome going on. That's it. Just very rudimentary. What do those two things have in common? Their emotional experiences. So now we go to step 3, which is now that we have on one half a batch of concretes for this thing of cleanliness, humility, and on the other half, the second step, a batch of concretes for what I think reverence is. Now what I want us to do is take these two batches and see what do they have in common, what's similar to them, and that's step 3. So, what does humility and reverence share? Well, I think there's two things they share. One involves awareness. Well, one thing that they both share, so they both share this. One thing that they both share is a recognition of a high value. In the first case, it was Lisa Van Dam, it was the senior architect. In the second case, it was this awesome surgeon and this awesome book called The Fountainhead, which I would recommend. And the second thing that they have in common, and just two things up there in outline. The second thing that I think both batches of concretes have in common, the humility batch and the reverence batch, is that I think they both have in common some response to the high value. Whatever it is, whatever the response is, there's some response, there's something going on in their head. Maybe they're saying something, maybe they're not, but there's some response to it. And so, what I think what they both have in common, to put it in the clean, grammatical, formal statement in one sentence, is this. An awareness of a high value leading to some cognitive response. Period. Whatever it is. There's some high value going on, and there's some cognitive response, something in their head that's leading to this, some kind of enunciation, inward or outward, whatever it might be. Inward or outward, whatever it might be. So that's it. High value, some response. That's what they have in common. And now we reach the final step, the fourth step, the differentia, i.e., what distinguishes humility, the first batch of concretes, from reverence, the second batch of concretes. Put another way, what makes them different? The thing we're interested in ultimately. I'll begin with the reverence. And here's what I think reverence is. What makes reverence different from humility? And put another way, the thing it also has in it that makes it different from reverence, that key different factor, is that I think reverence is an outwardly directed emotional response. I say that again. Reverence is an outwardly directed emotional response. Some kind of love, admiration, or awe toward the high value in question. Again, I'll say that again. Reverence is an outwardly directed emotional response, love, admiration, or awe directed to the high value in question, whatever it is. So put in one word, it's an emotion. That's it. So now we come to the conclusion, what is humility? Or at least what I'm claiming humility to be. And here it is. Humility is an inwardly directed volitional restraint. Humility is an inwardly directed volitional restraint. A recognition of one's proper place in the value hierarchy in question, expressed through selective silence, self-limitation, or deferential action, for the sake of the higher value's full expression. I say that all again. Humility is inwardly directed volitional restraint, a recognition of one's proper place in the value hierarchy, expressed through selective silence, self-limitation, or deferential action, all for the sake of the higher value's full expression. Let's hear it one more time. Just for my own sake. Humility is an inwardly directed volitional restraint, recognition of one's proper place in the value hierarchy in question, expressed through selective silence, self-limitation, or deferential action, all for the sake of the higher value's full expression. So, what I think the definition of humility is from this process, to put it again in a one sentence, clear, grammatical, formal statement, is the following. Humility is one's withholding of expression to give full scope to a validated higher value. I say that definition again. Humility is one's withholding of expression to give full scope to a validated higher value. Thus, humility properly understood, in the face of superiors, omit one's own contributions so as to immerse oneself in the fountainhead of superior individuals. I, for one, love that aesthetic language of superior, inferior, because I'm happy to fall into that role because I'm a hero worshiper. I love my heroes, and I want to fall into line when I'm before them. However, if you chafe at the language of superior and inferior, you can simply say someone higher, someone you really more respect. You can fill in that blank, but I think you get it. It's someone higher than you that you recognize and have validated sometime in the past, and therefore you want to immerse yourself and give them the full scope of their expression by withholding your own. And so that said, that's what I think humility is. It's an inwardly directed volitional restraint because you're recognizing your place in the value hierarchy, and by doing so, you're being honest about your position and their position, and you're acting accordingly. And now to characterize it, to put it in another way, it's you being quiet. Because what you have to say is not that interesting compared to what they have to say and what they have to share in that context. And I think that's helpful. With that said, that's what I think humility is. I have more of what I could say about this, what I think humility is in terms of now in ethics. Is it a principle? Is it a virtue? And then how does that integrate with the objectivist virtues, the canonical ones? But I want to leave it there and turn for questions and discussion. Before that point, I just want to get on record. I meant to say this at the very beginning, but I think I just wanted to get straight into it. But this is important. As you saw from the beginning, Van very much did not see humility as a positive thing. I think rightfully so. Humility, born down from Christianity and altruism, and you can ask like, what's the whole problem with that in the Q&A? But she rightfully identified that this thing that most people understand humility to be is plain evil and is a vice, which I completely agree with. With that said, what I did was not give you some kind of thing she believed in. It's not some kind of objectivist idea. I'm coming from my objectivist perspective, and I'm laying out what I think this thing is in a different way. What I also, just to make it clear, everything I said is not objectivism. It's just coming from an objectivist position, and I'm saying that as a matter of integrity. With that said, I also just want to say as the ending, as a concession, you could say, I basically think you can't disagree with the 4 steps. I think you can't disagree with the process. I think you can't disagree with what reverence is. I think you can't disagree with this phenomenon that I've outlined. I think the only thing you could really take issue with is the name, the label. Is this thing humility, or is it something else like deference or whatever? That I'm completely open to changing my mind on. I'm fine with that. I'm not wedded to it. But as is the case of objectivism, the most important thing about a concept is the process, the objective process, the methodical, systematic way you unlock the concept. The word, the name we give that concept is like the final 5%. It's just a label. So we can just have something to easily latch onto. So that instead of saying humility is the inward expression, the inward volitionary state recognition of one's proper place in the value hierarchy to get the full scope, you just say humility. That's it. That's the whole point of the work. Again, I'm making the claim that if the word should be something like deference or whatever it is, make a case for it, you could probably convince me. But what I don't think is really up for debate, but you can take disagreement with what I said, but just from my own perspective, what I don't think is really disagreeable is the process I laid out. I think I did lay out real things. But of course, like, I do want to hear your thoughts on it. I'm just making that point that if you're chafing at the word, I understand. But if you're chafing at the process, that I want to hear more of them. So that's it. That's what I think humility is. If you got that definition down, awesome. But with that said, I want to turn it now to discussion, to Q&A. And with that said, thank you. And Audrey is first to go.
Where did you get the 4-step method? Did you get that from IT? Did you come up with that on your own from ITOE, or?
I'm just that good. No, no, that was from, I don't know who exactly said it, but I got it from Harry Binswanger. Harry Binswanger is one of like the first objectivist philosophers after Ayn Rand. There's Karl Marx, right, and there's Friedrich Engels. You could basically say there's Ayn Rand, and then there's Harry Binswanger. There's also another guy called Peikoff, but he's like basically like, he was like this second, third, whatever, in command from Ayn Rand, and he's still alive today. So Dr. Harry Binswanger, he's an objectivist philosopher. I got it from him. I didn't get it from one of his books. He just said it. Like, he had a couple episodes of it on it in his Meaning of the Minds discussions, which happen every Sunday morning. incidentally, when I first learned about it, it was his wife, Jean Maloney Binsringer, who was giving a presentation on it, and she just summed it up. And this, I might get the details a little wrong, so don't quote me on this. But she said, oh yeah, so here's Harry's method, the genius method. And so she laid out the first steps, what I did today. And for a different concept. She did visibility. But she laid out just the first steps in like 2 minutes just to get it on the table like I did. And Harry then said at the end, that was a good summary, Gene. I just want to say that all I did was added the first step. That's it. It's not my thing. So I don't know if that means he got it from her or just from someone else out there. But when it comes to the pedigree, certainly it's objectivist oriented. When it comes to the origin, I don't really know.
I think I was in that meeting of the minds.
Oh, wow.
About visibility.
Yeah, that was
So
awesome.
I definitely didn't get as much value as you did.
When she really proved it to me, Jean, in that episode. And it was very apparent to me that this was a closeted superpower, I think. And like I said, like I think it's so good that I don't think you could, I find it hard to believe that, could you disagree with that process? Maybe with the concretes and particulars, I suppose, but the process is excellent, and I think you really get a sharp understanding.
Do you remember the name of the meeting of the minds? I'm going to have to listen to that.
It was definitely in 2025, but I don't remember, but it's, I think when I checked on the website, it's not on the website, but I still have an email for it that they sent out, so it's probably in the email. But if for some reason you can't find it, just reach out and I'll send you that.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions or new
So I agree with your definition, but I think it's a little bit narrow, or maybe it doesn't go far enough, because you're saying it's to restrain the lower value for the sake of the higher value, right? So in the example of you talking to your mentor, you interrupted her, right? Because you're the lower value and she's the higher value. So I think it should go both ways, because why should you talk at all then? Just be you humble the whole time, right? So at some point she has to let you talk, right? So she has to display humility too, but that doesn't make her the lower value. So sometimes the higher value has to be humble also.
That's I want to say. So I did say a couple of times when talking. This was a very minor detail. I did say though, in that context, right? So there was very delimited parameters of context that I gave the surgery just in that one moment, like maybe less than like an hour in reality, but like not everything that happened before in life, not everything that happened after, just that one moment. In this context, it's a 15-minute conversation. So now when it comes to when you press play, and then how should they orient themselves going forward? And realizing like, yeah, well, sometimes I really do want to hear what Nick has to say, and like he has to have questions and things on his mind. And kind of part of the purpose of him being here is to learn. I kind of need to get some feedback from him. So when it comes to that, I'm chafing at that, but just to give a direct answer, I wouldn't say she would, in those cases, be humble. I say in those cases, she's being rational and honest about my relationship to her, and that I'm the student, the person trying to learn from her, and she's the teacher, mentor, and she's aware that, you know, someone who really looks up to you and explicitly says, hey, you're my hero, could fall into a little bit of like too much silence, and she could prompt herself to, hey, what do you think, Nick? Or, you know, does this remind you of anything, whatever it might be. So I agree that there are cases where it would make sense for her to give some time to let me speak, or like whatever it might be. So I agree with the substance of what you're saying. So now just chafing at would I call it humility, and I would say, obviously I'm a bit biased because I really do think she's better than me.
Or can I ask a follow-up question?
But let me just wrap up by saying, as my first draft, I want to say she should be rational, and that's just an innocuous thing. But that's the first draft. But yeah, go ahead.
Wait, so before the question, isn't it also rational for me to realize that I'm here to learn, so let the teacher talk?
Yeah.
That's
So that's-
rational also.
I don't think it's my first draft answer isn't particularly good. My first drafts aren't particularly good.
Right. No, I just,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying it to both, you know?
Yeah, Go ahead.
So the follow-up question was, do you think it's equally less or more important for a higher value to be humble than it is for a lower value to be humble?
Can you say that again? I lost the first time.
Is it more, less, or equally valuable for higher value to be humble than it is for lower value to be humble?
Well, everything in those things are relational. So a higher value being humble to who? To someone they see as higher?
No, to the lower value.
Well, again, I don't think if you're taking humility in the way that I just said, like in the last 2 minutes, that they should allow them to speak sometimes and be. That's not good.
Well, let's just say like I'm a millionaire, or like let's say I'm a billionaire, right? And if I don't go around like flaunting my money to everyone, some people would say I'm being humble, or like.
Oh, I actually am really glad you brought this kind of example up, because yesterday I saw TikTok, the source of all things true, and there was a case of this famous wrestler who went to a 7-Eleven, and the cashier, like, they recognized him, but he was a very cool and subdued and just chill person. So wait, but aren't you so and so? Yes, I am. But he didn't brag about it. And one of the comments in that was, "Oh, he's so humble." And I was like, "Oh wow, there is something real right there that they're identifying." Would I call him humble? This is an instance of, I would say, really directly for the sake of life, he's being rational, but so is the humble person in our whole talk. So that's not really that helpful. It's not precise enough to vibe. So I was thinking about what I would call that. From my sense, I wouldn't call it humility. I wouldn't call it primarily honesty. I think honesty is a thing that would get you to this state that we're talking. What came to mind when I saw that, and I'm glad this came up on TikTok so I can think about it. So for this very moment, Aristotle in his Nicomachean Ethics, superb human achievement, for that alone, he's in the ninth circle of heaven. But Aristotle in his Nicomachean Ethics, for those unfamiliar, he lays out a bunch of virtues, things like liberality, courage, temperance, justice, prudence, so many virtues. And I think we're all vaguely familiar, at least, with his golden mean ethics, right? So courage is the golden mean between timidity and arrogance, something like that. And so he has a virtue called magnanimity. And then his view of that, I'm not quoting, but this is a very good paraphrase, I think, because this comes up a lot in Dante, incidentally. Dante's Inferno. But for him, magnanimity is a great-souled man, a great person, who knows he's great and knows he's worthy of great things. A great person who knows he's great and is worthy of great things. And Aristotle has a view of how that person should conduct himself. And he says that because he's great, he's only focused on great things, and therefore that's a very few delimited amount, because there aren't many great things by definition. He said that person will move slowly and will be very calm, because he knows he's staying focused on his mission, and his mission can only have so many pieces, right? Versus many other people who have a lot of things going on. He's very focused on his billion-dollar business. He's focusing on his wrestling trade, whatever it is. And so, by being like that, that makes him, when he's honest about what he's doing, he's got it thought out, his disposition, his attitude, his tone, his demeanor, the way he comports himself is that cool and collected. I do not call it humility because I think that's too much in the camp of Christianity. Oh, don't be too great. Who do you think you are, a billionaire? Who do you think you are, a wrestler? Make yourself smaller. I think it has too much of that tint. I know you don't need that. And because of that, I'm really chafing at kind of humility. So what I would say is that person is magnanimous.
Wait, but you yourself called it high value, right? So you're saying that they're great. So
Right.
how can you argue with that? Like, who do you think you are?
Right?
Right now, you just said, who do you think you are, billionaire? But you classified them as a higher value.
Right.
So how can you have both positions?
I'm not clear on what the.
Okay, no worries.
He was not saying his opinion of it. He was paraphrasing what they would say, not his opinion.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Derek.
Sorry. Oh, go ahead.
You have one more, go ahead.
I just I don't want to take too much time. Just the last thing, like,
Sure.
I would argue it's more important for a higher value to be humble than it is for a lower value because higher value, the way to be humble is by having greatness, like you said, or something, which the higher value has. So if the lower value doesn't have the thing, how can they restrain it? They don't have anything to be humble about.
Yeah, no, I get that. Again, I agree with the literal spirit of what you're saying. I'm disagreeing with the literal letter, as in should we call that humility? I think in that case, I want to call it responsibility now as a second draft. But that's a legal question. I think so long as we agree on the substance, which I think is 95% of the deal, what we call it is secondary. But I'll think about that, of course. Derek.
Great. I love this conversation. I'd love to delve into humility and its application in different situations. So I look at the 7-Eleven wrestler example as humility in relation to the dynamic of that conversation, which is maybe valuing, and value not so much as the value of someone being better or worse in status, but actually in valuing equality, the value of equality. So I want to look at the lens of using humility in relation to the different values at stake in that situation, whether it's you're teaching, so humility may look different than a social conversation amongst peers. Because I think that values are interrelated and affect one each other. So I think what I'd love to maybe delve into is, and maybe just to get your thoughts on, what I see defining as humility, for example, value, is one component. And it's one component in a facet of values that knowing its relativity in different scenarios really makes you able to create an intentional, masterful life. I'd love to hear your thoughts about, what maybe just that statement, I guess, in a sense. So,
I think concrete would be helpful to get on the table. Do you have a scenario in mind?
yes. So I'm thinking about like a teacher. A teacher teaching a class, for example, has to have a certain ethos when they're teaching to be taken seriously. And I think that same teacher having a conversation with peers might exemplify humility in different ways, such as the 7-Eleven example, to show maybe equality. And I'm thinking of the impact of when to employ humility, and whether it's teaching in a class or whether it's being in a social setting.
And so, to be clear on the question, you're saying you're thinking about and questioning when should the teacher demonstrate humility or when should the students demonstrate humility?
No, I think it's more about opening the conversation about how defining one value is important, but knowing when to employ it, and the values that are associated in that context, and knowing those two are equally as important.
Okay, I think helps me. So when in some situation where there's a constellation of values going on, I'm thinking just, because you brought up teaching, I'm thinking of college. I've seen this maybe a couple of times in my life. Like a really smart kid is in class, he really likes his teacher, and he really wants to hear what he's saying, but then there's this young lady over here, he really likes her, he wants to show his peacock feathers, and show himself off, and like, oh, look how smart I am, really prove that to her, so he wants to talk in that instance, but he doesn't want to talk in the first instance with the teacher. That's really, I think, like, I assume like that's roughly the kind of scenario you have, like when there's multiple values going on, like when do you choose? I think I have two answers to that. One is, well, first, it's just always contextual. So, for example, if the teacher is saying something like really awesome about Homer that you never knew, and you're just like saying, oh my God, please give me these words, that's when you just notice on an emotional level. You probably want to let that keep going rather than say something to sound smart for her sake. So always context dependent, but I think to go a step further, maybe one piece of advice that I've always got a lot of value from was from an objectivist intellectual called Alex Epstein. And he said, like, whenever you find yourself going off the rails for some mission you have, some goal, he says, like, oh, well, you forgot your purpose. You forgot why you're there. And so in that kind of scenario, if the primary purpose is to learn, right? And it's to learn from your teacher and understand Homer and Virgil and Dante and Milton, teacher sounded like someone. If you're that person in that situation, you're that student, always like have that as a pressing factor in your head. Like, well, what I'm really here to do is like talk and what I'm really here to do is learn from this great teacher. And it's like, well, but there's just someone else I really like in this scenario that's made up. Oh, I really like this person. I think instead of seeing it as, and this is a very objective, spirited answer, I think, instead of seeing it as, well, I can only have one or the other, see as, instead, how can I get both? So in the context of the class, I'm going to listen. And then after, I'm going to employ some Aristotelian courage and go up to her and talk to her. And then talk about the content. And then it's like, oh, now I don't have to choose between one or the other. I can have both 100%. So I think, just to summarize, when you're in those situations where there's a constellation of values, don't think about it as, what I think we usually do is, oh, which one do I have to sacrifice? Think about it instead as something that's really life-serving. How can I get both? Is that possible? And then what's required? I hope that's helpful.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Jean, you had your hand up, but if not, we can go to Tricia. Yeah.
So one of the things that stood out to me was he talked about validated value. So I think that's different than what he's talking about billionaire, or this person is the teacher, so they're of higher value. This person is the billionaire, so they're of higher value. So I think, what society likes to tell us who is the higher value, religion likes to tell us what and who is the higher value, but I think what's really stood out to me is of this idea of validated value. So, and that's very personal, and to know what you value personally, it takes longer, it's not as lazy as this person has more money, this person is a wrestler, so they're, and a famous wrestler, so they are of higher value. But that also means you need to know what you value, where you see your own value in comparison to that.
Mhm.
So I was curious your thoughts about, how personal, multifaceted that is personally versus are there true values? I know you mentioned Aristotle. Would you see that as like, are those like true regardless for anybody? Those are the true higher values, or is that just one of the ways that somebody has tried to give us a list of values, so in case you don't want to explore it on your own? Jung says if you don't know who you are, the world will tell you. So is it just one of many ways that the world can tell you what is valuable, or do you think those are true values regardless?
Yeah, and to
Related to.
summarize your question, it's, yeah, you can obviously have very personal values, like me for Lisa, or the junior architect for the senior architect, but like, we don't really care about the senior architect, like, we don't actually value him. I think you guys will love Lisa, but frankly, if not in education or into literature, you probably won't get that much. So those are very personal, but the question is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but are there some people out there like Aristotle, for example, that should be universal values to everyone, regardless of your personal inclinations or otherwise? That's a question, right?
Yeah. Are there universal ones that you think it could relate to everybody, or do you think it really has to be personal? Like if a famous wrestler, whoever, I don't even know any wrestlers, but if I met one of them versus a professor that I really love or a writer I really love, I'm for sure going to want to listen to the writer more than the wrestler. But that's very personal to me, even if the writer is maybe mid-level or whatever in their profession, but I value their value more than the other person or something, or their words maybe.
I think what I would say is two things. So from objectivism's perspective, there is no such thing as universal values or universal truths for everyone, regardless of what they think or believe. So this gets to a very core objectivist position, which is all values are conditional. To whom and for what, and even underneath that, I see Vinny nodding, so I guess I'm saying it right. Even underneath that, all values are contingent on one fundamental core question that has to come first before we even start to talk about philosophy, ethics, values, morality. And that question is, do you want to live or not? Which means, in another sense, do you want to pursue life or do you want to pursue death? And if you want to pursue life, and this is a question for every person. If you want to pursue life, then here's the 99%, here's what I think what moral code you should follow. Here's a moral code that is super conducive 100% to achieving life. Call it the objectives ethics. You want to pursue death, you just sit there, or you want to hamstring yourself, choose the 9 others, pragmatism, stoicism, okay. So, with that said, all values in that sense have to be personal because they all have to be chosen. And you have to go out there in reality and recognize people who understand why they're good, judge them based off of standard, that standard should come from ethics. So all values have to be personal by definition. Now, the question to integrate what you're getting at is, but okay, so if you accept life and that's what you're going after, and you're going after life, which means pursuing your values, pursuing your happiness based off a rational standard, and all the things what I think that means. If you're just that kind of person, which I think many people are, do all those kind of people need to value someone like Aristotle? Like someone that just universal, like if you value life, do you need to value it? I think what I would say is, I think you have to recognize his value, because without him, you wouldn't have gotten a lot of things. Science, Francis Bacon, Isaac Newton, John Locke, the founding fathers, the Renaissance, what's there to rediscover about Aristotle? I know there's other things, but in the spirit of it, of course, Ayn Rand and then Harry Binswanger, Peacock, there's a great book called Aristotle's Children. I mean, he really did lead to so much awesomeness. With that said, do you have to value him in a more personal, like more meaningful sense, rather than just recognition? I don't think so, frankly. I mean, because then that would mean like you should read the Nicomachean Ethics. You should read his views on metaphysics, at least in some way, or you should just be educated on them. Well, then by that logic, you should be educated on Francis Bacon, and then Isaac Newton, and then Locke, and then Montesquieu, Dante, Homer, and I think that would be great for people. I think that would really enrich their life. But ultimately, to be honest, I don't think it's like mandatory.
Yeah, it sounds almost like all of these things will educate you to reach your own personal value standards and your own personal approach to life. You could, in an educated way, but it'll probably inspire a lot of those. It might not be exactly in line with this philosophy or that philosophy, but it could be a culmination of all these different things and what you've taken from it for your own personal approach to validating value. Versus running it through like, well, Aristotle would have said that this has higher value than this.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, there always has to be a personal validation process, but that personal validation process needs to be paired up with a rational philosophy. I think that's objectivism. So I'm just making that point because I don't want it to sound like subjectivism. Oh, go personally validate everyone. Well, how? I don't know, just by how we feel, I guess. Like, no, there has to be a substance there. Vinny?
I think
Oh, sure.
I was saying in relation to, your name is Trisha?
Trisha, yeah.
Trisha? This might relate a little bit because maybe you weren't looking for universal values, but universal virtues.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, different philosophers have their virtues, and I have a quote here, just from Aristotle, where, or I'll summarize in my own terms, but basically, virtues are like his universal. There's like a list of those things, right? You have to pick your values, but the virtues are these sort of things that there's just a set list of that he's come up with, and those are used to ensure that you have good goals, and prudence, humility, in one sense, a subset of prudence is the wisdom used to get to the goal.
Okay. So, that makes sense. Kind of like kind of the gatekeepers to get to that.
Yeah, so you have these virtues. If you have the right virtues, it means you'll know what to value. It'll help you figure out what to value. And then you have this thing called prudence. And then a subset of prudence is this idea of being teachable, which means being open to learning things. And so, because you can't just have the virtues, you also have to have like wisdom, and like that's like, you know, people and gain a lot of knowledge. And so then if you could use wisdom with but you have to have the wisdom, you have to have the openness of mind to eat the substance that you're being taught and chew it and like understand it, then you could get to the goals. But yeah, so there's those two things.
What from what Trisha said sparked that? Because I agree with what you're saying, but I'm
It
interested.
was only just the looking for universal values, whether values are personal, virtues are not.
Where the value, say that last part again?
She was asking about universal values. Values are personal. We're going to all value different things. Virtues are the universals.
Yes, universals, if you choose life and want to pursue it, which is, well, you have to choose them. But if you choose life, and therefore they are universal. But you have to be that kind of person to choose wanting to live and wanting to pursue life and achieve life on earth, which is not a choice everyone makes. So I'm putting that there. Vinny.
First, I love the questions. I think interesting and your talk was really good. I think the one thing for me that clarifies is like first the definition of value, not going into like the formal definition, but one way of seeing value is as a projection of the value. The same way you have like, if you have a flashlight you put on the wall, you see the light. Without the flashlight, the light is just a projection of that. So a value is not an entity. It's not something you find in nature. Without the valuer, there's no value at all. It doesn't exist. So the comment you made, a higher value is acting with humility, or a low, it doesn't do that. Like a value doesn't act. A value is as projection.
No, I was just using his definition of what a higher value and lower value is.
Yeah, but imagine like in that dynamic he explained with Van Damme,
Lisa.
with Lisa.
Yeah.
Lisa is not a higher value, as in universal stated all the time. For her, she doesn't need to be a higher value all the time.
Yeah, but in that situation, she is, right? And
It depends. It depends. Who to whom, right? And he said like a value to whom. Like now the conversation is like a wave. The values goes up and down, right? So for Lisa, for him to be her apprentice, and for him to leave as someone that successfully got out of the state of apprentice to be like, now I know, it's a higher value to her. So to the extent that she needs to pause and listen to him, at that moment she's exercising, it's of a higher value to me that he gets out of here as a good apprentice. And then the next second, she listens to him, and then now she gives the feedback. And now she thinks she's the higher value. And he's listening because he thinks now she's the higher value. But then at some point, he has a question. And for him, it's like, if I get out of here without that answer, it's not going to give me the value I'm looking for. So I need to intervene and ask the question. And she's going to sense and say, answering the question will achieve my value of him being an apprentice. So now I'm going to listen to him. So you see, it comes and goes. It's not like across the board a stated thing. And then she being a higher value is a higher value to him. She doesn't act as a higher value for him. Because she's interested in her values, he's interested in his values. And they just go up and down.
Wait, I'm a little bit confused here because I thought, first of all, I thought we were talking about one situation, and when you said, because I was just using your definition of higher value, lower value, and I thought you meant a higher value individual in that situation. So, for example, in the classroom, the teacher would be a higher value individual because she has the knowledge, right? So I'm not talking about personal values. I was just saying in that situation. I don't want to take up too much time, but I did think of an example with you guys.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So let's say I go to the park and I'm playing pickup basketball, right? And we're playing one-on-one. So everyone has to wait in line because only two people can play at one time. And there's two NBA players there, right? So there's no argument. Like for a basketball court, the two NBA players are higher value individuals, right?
No,
But in respect to this skill
Or
of
they're
basketball,
better at basketball.
Yeah,
right?
that's
So
it.
they're better at basketball. So that means they're the best players.
that's not a value. That's not a value.
That's
I guess it's not a value, but the way when he was talking about higher value, he was saying the person who's better at the thing that's in that situation.
It depends.
I want to, first I just want to say, everything you said was awesome. I love the way,
Thank you.
that was good.
I wrote it down.
And I hope that was helpful for context. For what you're saying, this gets at a good distinction. He's better, he has better skill, he has higher skill. Now, is he a value? Maybe to some of them, like if you like basketball and you really into that, then yeah, sure. Well, not even yeah, sure. It's, maybe you like, I like basketball now a little bit. I went from this to this. So I like it, but when it comes to players, the only ones I actually like revere, even though I don't really care much about them ultimately, is like Kobe Bryant and Stephen Curry, just because they're great and they've earned their laurels, and in the face of greatness, I'm a hero worshiper, I have to, because I love that. But like, if you don't care about basketball, and you see these people, I'm like, you might think they're cool, but you won't see them as higher values. You'll recognize their skill, but they won't be higher values.
So that was just a setup. I'm gonna ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So-
Yeah.
So now that only 2 people can play at one time and we have to take turns, right? And your definition was humility is a lower value individual, in this case, someone who's not as good as at basketball, restraining themselves for someone who's better at basketball, right? So should these 2 NBA players keep playing the whole day and not give anyone a chance?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I love that. Yeah, I now that I think about it.
And the better question is, should I let them play all the
Sure.
Because I'm a lower value.
Well, I first thing I want to say is, I know in the examples I gave freeze frame snapshots of situations. And that was all for pedagogical purpose, right? So we can talk about this. In reality, when it comes to that kind of question, like, well, should the NBA players like commit themselves, or should they go full hog and just play? In reality, what you would do, and this is what anyone would think, just about me would do, is just have a conversation. Hey guys, there's 10 of us, 2 of you, pretty awesome at this. Yeah, it's good.
But then you're not being humble.
But again, this gets at what Vinny was trying to say, which is, if you don't actually value the basketball, you don't actually value them, you don't actually care about that, then frankly to you, they're just regular people who just so happen to be really awesome at basketball. But you don't necessarily value them any more than the other people.
No, so the value is not on the people. The value is we're all at the basketball court, so we're all here to play.
Mhm.
So the value is on the game,
Yeah.
right? So the better people should play, basically.
No, I think it depends on the agreement. Like if the agreement is let's play everybody in line, 2 at a time, that's the agreement. Now, when it's your turn, you can see the turn to the basketball player. The next turn, the person might not do that. They have to play. If the basketball players say, no, I'm going to stay, then that's not a matter of humility. Just like they're just being assholes. They need to follow the agreement that everybody did. Now, if everybody agrees that, guys, let's just sit here and watch them play, if they're willing to do it, they can do it. But if one of them, no, I'd rather play, and so, okay, so we watch, and the 9 people's time, then your turn, you can go and play. Because that's the agreement. But that's highly personal, right? You might not, you might not. It's not about them automatically being more valuable.
Yeah.
So-
I think I just want to say, I think that answers it in, again, just put it in one word, it's about the agreement everyone comes to. And just because they're better in the skill doesn't automatically mean, therefore, let's defer to them. But I just want to say this as a sense of life point, just the spirit of this situation. If I was in it, I think if an objectivist was in it, in general, I'm not saying this is a prescriptive thing. I think, especially for me, but I think for an objectivist, you couldn't help but feel pretty awesome in front of them. Like, oh wow, this is a pretty cool guy. I really want to see them do their thing. Like, wow, they're here. So maybe you would have some humility in that. That's because you really value, as an objectivist, greatness. You value heroes. You value high achievers. That is core in the objectivist. That is not core, but that's part of the objectivist philosophy. But you know, I mean, if you really just wanted to play basketball with your friends and that was the higher value in the moment, then sure. Then let's come to an agreement. Hey, maybe you guys switch off, whatever it is, who cares? So that's just, I want to get that part because I think what Vinny said is correct. But I also think from the spirit of what I was saying today, there is something about like, you would treat them kind of specially. What would that be? Again, it would be very like just initial, wow, it's so cool being here. Like, hey, if they want this, like, let's really think about that. Maybe we want to give them that. But again, it's not an automatic thing, but I think we got it. Audrey.
What principles did you apply to decide to label the concept as humility as opposed to deference?
Yeah, so the answer is basically none. No. But I was thinking about that because I knew there would be. I'm not saying you do or don't like the term, or you really love it or really hate it, but I assume there's some chafing at it, especially from some who are going to watch this, I'm sure. My answer to this, I have an answer to this now from yesterday. Gene sent me the definition of deference, which is humble submission out of respect, something like that. And that very much sounds like everything I just said. Very exact. I don't ultimately like that better than humility.
Wait, say that
I
again.
don't like that better than humility. From that definition. Yes.
It's not used though.
The reason humility has the staying power of a virtue, of a principle. It's something you enact and employ and gives you guidance and it unlocks content for you. Deference is kind of just a noun you use. It's not really on the level of a principle. Now, we could name it this and make it that and claim it and now give it its laurels and make it the theme of one of the serpents of heaven and like goes the whole aesthetic way good. Now this gets to a principle that I use now to say, well, why do I still value humility over deference to label rather than, championing deference and making that a virtue? Something I really loved about what Rand did in The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, and just in her philosophy in general, is she took terms and concepts that had a monopoly from religion, soul, reverence, spirituality, spiritual values. She has a secular view of immortality, just in terms of like when you kind of think of that, it's great men can do awesome things. Some in that, you don't have to get into it. But she took these terms that had originally just this pure 100% mystical understanding, and she reclaimed them, basically. She saved them from mysticism. And she gave her a secular view, and you can have now a secular understanding of spirituality, a secular understanding of soul, which is consciousness, your mind, and so on. And so from that, I think there's something really heroic, I think, about going to the other religious concepts. And so another talk I could do is on hope. Hope is a theological virtue, and Dante gets a whole championship of it. I think there's a rational understanding of hope, and it captures something real in reality, concrete examples that everyone experiences. I would like to reclaim that because it has that staying power for thousands of years, and also I think there's something heroic about it. Now that's an aesthetic principle. I have one more principle involved, and it's an ethical one. I think humility is a package deal, and I think most of the time it's the evil stuff what Peg Beard's mom said to him. But there are cases where I think it is what I was saying today, Nick and Lisa, the junior architect, senior architect. And because that's true, I do want to take the good and make that the concept. Is it worth doing that? I think so. I don't think you should go on crusades for humility now. I think this is just something that you should keep in your personal life and a nod and a wink to everyone else who knows. But it's not worth it going on a crusade for, I think. Selfishness is, though. Soul is. The humility, it's such an achievement you have to get that you've mastered so much else. I'm okay if you don't crusade for it. But keep it in for yourself when you do have your own instance of your senior architect, of your hero, of your mentor.
I think this is like very interesting to me because I did that journey for the humility work way back when I started learning objectivism but like coming from Brazil, like humility, it's a very Christian country, even if you're not religious. So humility is like a very powerful word, used a lot. It's very like common contexts. And at some point I was like, that doesn't sound good. And why? And also I'm trying to got to that definition, the evil definition that you did. And
The evil.
yeah, the bad part
Yeah.
of it. And at the time, I think you're obviously way more elaborate. But at the time, the way that I got out of the word, I was not trying to find the good in the word. It was like this doesn't sound good. You know, I didn't have the perspective of the good part. It was just like this is just the way to get out of that is just by being truthful. Because like humility, at least in Brazil, is used to you should downplay yourself. And either you downplay yourself or you overplay yourself. And it's like both are lies, both are evasions. So even if you discard all of that, clean the slate and say, how about me just being accurate?
Yes.
So if I'm good at something, I have to be accurate in my self-evaluation and how I portray myself. So I'm not going to say I'm better or worse.
You're being honest.
I'm being honest.
I want to cut in and say, if the view is, I'm not saying this was the view, I'm cutting you off. But I'm saying if the view is, just say be honest in those situations. My view is, I think that's too wide. And I think there's a value in having a precise principle for these kinds of concretes. Because when I think of honesty, and this is what you're saying, be honest about the situation. When you think of honesty just commonsensically, you think of these instances where you're tempted not to be honest. For example, if your spouse says, do you like the food I made? Are you going to be honest? Oh, well, I don't. You were honest. But you have a real temptation not to. Another instance, you didn't finish a project for work. Hey, did you finish the project? It's the deadline. You're really tempted not to tell the truth now. These are the kinds of concretes, right? This is the process. These are the kind of concretes that I think really get at what saliently honesty is. Now, from what you're saying, yeah, it is true. You're being honest, like for me and Lisa, but that's not what you would think of.
No, I think it's more like reality oriented.
Yeah, reality oriented, but
It's just different than honesty. No?
yeah, sure. But I just want to say, I think there's a value in having something precise for these kinds of concretes and reality-oriented, rational, truth-rooted situation. Those are fine, perfectly fine. I like mine better because it's more precise and really gets at the heart of what we're really talking about.
Like, can I just finish then?
Yeah, sure.
Because I actually have a question.
Okay, yeah.
So what I learned is that what caused people to divert from being accurate is a defect in, like, if you think of your self-esteem as an engine, and the way you get out of being accurate is there a defect in a part of that engine. So, like for example, if you are talking to someone that you really value that person's opinion, and you should be listening more than talking, what can divert you from that is if you think, oh, I need to show that person that I know more.
Yeah.
And then you feel the urge to interrupt and to, which is a defect in your self-esteem.
Yep.
And you almost want to prove yourself.
Yep.
Because you want you value their opinion, but you want their opinion to be good about you.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna force it. So I think then the question becomes like, in your talk, you didn't mention the word self-esteem. And to me, I think it kind of has to be part of the and that's not a criticism. I think you have limited time and you can focus on something. But I think for me, it's really important that the self-esteem is observed and the role in the
Very good. I want to latch onto that because this gets at what is the objectivist ethics, and all of it is integrated into everything I said, but it's all implicit. And now this is the kind of question where it gets at, well, how does the objectivist view of self-esteem factor into this? How does the objectivist view of virtue factor into this? How does the objectivist view of the standard of value get into this? And it all does. This is why, incidentally, I said, don't crusade for humility. Because unless you have the right kind of virtues, the right kind of values, the right kind of standard of value, the right kind of morality, until you have all that, humility is out, benevolence is out, hope is out, spirituality is out. If you don't even know what independence is and integrity, you're not getting any of those. So, it's really for, again, a nod and a wink for those who really get it and reach that level. You should be really proud of yourself if you do that. But with that said, how does self-esteem integrate into this? I had virtue planned, but not self-esteem. So, well, first let's say what self-esteem is. Self-esteem is a fundamental conviction you have that you're worthy of existing here in reality and life. You're capable of existing here. You're capable of doing the stuff of life and achieving life. You can do it. You can do it. Self-esteem. You got that conviction. You earned it for yourself. And you can only get it by proving it to yourself. Other people can't get it into you, just like how other people can't eat for you. Other people can't give you their self-esteem, their happiness, their virtue, their knowledge, whatever. That all has to be fundamentally learned on your part as an individual. You can learn from other people, work with other people, but ultimately it's you who has to do these things, which is democracy. So how does getting more into it, how does self-esteem factor in? If you have that fundamental conviction that you're capable of just being awesome at life, you're capable of doing good at life, achieving your values, and prove it over and over again. As Lisa says sometimes, she feels invincible. I feel invincible at this point in my life in many contexts. I brim with confidence. I love this stuff. There is no temptation to fake it. There is no temptation to, I really want Lisa to like me. I really want the senior architect to like me. Like, yeah, that'd be nice, I suppose. But I don't need it. I'm good on my own. It'd be nice if it enriched my life, but that's not my purpose, to get her esteem and then get this one and that one and whoever. So if you have self-esteem, this is the fundamental, just almost like a inadvertent positive consequence of it. It's, you don't get that urge to find and want other people's esteem of you no matter what, or just to have it, regardless of the means, regardless of who you are. And so because of that, self-esteem is crucial to really employ humility and not fall into the temptation of being second-handed. I really want, again, the person's love and admiration. So self-esteem really is important. Vinny is absolutely correct. And I'm glad for that, because every single virtue that I could discuss with you all, humility, hope, these things are so laden with the more fundamental, wider concepts that have total dominion over them. Self-esteem, virtue, principles, purpose, rationality, and they have total dominion. It's like Minerva, Athena, with worshippers. The worshiper is pretty awesome, and it's really good to worship great things. But make no mistake, the great thing is Athena. So humility and hope, I think, can really add to your life. But don't mistake. You can only have that position when you know rationality and other things like independence and integrity and self-esteem are primary. And then now you can enjoy some of the fruits of that. benevolence, hope, humility. Okay, I think I got it. Newman?
I think you said earlier that an objectivist would say humility is vicious, right?
Yeah, from the evil. Yeah.
So, can you give me an argument why they would say that, and
Sure.
and how does their definition of humility differ from yours?
I first want to say, let's just turn it from the objectivist to the objectivist position, because I think some of you kind of now maybe on my side. But let me also say first, I'm not going against objectivism. Like, I agree that manners, right, in these kind of contexts, it's horrible, it's evil. I'm just getting some nuance, or however I would put it. I'll talk about that later. So what is evil with the traditional view of humility? My contrast, basically, from everything I just said today. What's evil about that? Well, first, think of the example. Imagine someone who, when they see success, awesome success, happiness, joy, virtue, happiness on earth, great, just all of it. Imagine their first response, the first thing they want to say to that person, their immediate, guttural, automatic reaction is to say, well, don't be too happy. Who do you think you are? You're not that good. And then say all the evil, horrendous, villainy stuff that our culture often then starts to rationalize that point. Oh, well, you didn't really build that. You had your mother and father, and then your school, and then, your society built the roads, and you used the roads, didn't you? And like, through all this nonsense that people say to tamp down champions, to tamp down heroes, the billionaires, the millionaires, the artists, the scientists. Oh, well, you didn't really invent something. You didn't really discover something. You aren't really that great.
You didn't build that.
We didn't know that.
But that's not humility, right?
Wait, so
You said
I'm
it's
not getting that again. So
It doesn't matter what someone says.
I want to get there. When they say, don't think you're too good, be humble. What they're saying is reduce yourself. Reduce your happiness, your joy, your wealth, oftentimes, whatever it is. And in that sense, humility from that perspective, I think, is a sin that effectively is happy people shouldn't be too happy, great people shouldn't be too great. Why? And this gets at the fundamental arch enemy of objectivism, which is altruism, the philosophy of self-sacrifice, the philosophy of selflessness. The whole reason they feel the need to say this is because there's people out there who are suffering who don't have that happiness, who don't have that love, who don't have that goodness, who don't have that joy. How could you allow yourself to be happy if other people are suffering and are in need and don't have what you have? Be humble. That is horrible. That is evil. Is that humility? No, obviously not humility.
But when people tell you to be humble, they're not saying don't be happy.
I know they're not saying that, but I think that's the message implicitly. And I think, I don't have any examples right now in my head, but I think that's the consequence. Obviously, when his mother is saying, I try to teach you, she never said, like, don't be happy, don't be joyful. Of course she would never say that. Personally, she's his mom. But think about if you are someone who has achieved, and you don't have to go on the level of a billionaire or whatever, but just a generic happy person, wife and kids, job you actually unironically, genuinely, authentically love, and you enjoy the things you do in your life and the good food you have, the lobster, and you really have a good material, spiritual life. And then someone says, be humble. Right. I mean, they're not saying don't be happy, but isn't the obvious message clearly from that fact to go, oh, well, I guess I shouldn't be too glad about what I got. or at least I shouldn't show it.
Don't be too
Yeah.
proud.
Don't be too fat because other people are going to get me. So that's what the evil is.
So I agree that, but so it's evil for someone else to tell me to be humble, but is it also evil for me internally to be humble?
From the talk I gave today, no, of course not.
No, from the objective position.
Well, forget the objective position. What view of humility are you talking about? My view, the good view, or the evil view?
So let's take your view of the internal, and now would the objectivist position say that even internal humility is bad?
From my view, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't think they would. I think they would, maybe they would chafe at the label, like maybe it's deference, but they wouldn't say it's evil because they would hear the whole thing and, oh, I know what Nick is saying. That's what they would say. So yeah, I think that's kind of.
Thank you.
Anyone have?
I want to make a comment.
Just really quick. So.
Am I evil, Audrey?
Huh?
Am I evil, Audrey? No, I'm just making a joke. Go ahead.
I forgot my point. You should go.
I think that I want to say something, and I want to hear you guys' reaction. And I think I'll say what point I want to prove. Imagine I'll go up there, shove him to the side, and say, I am way more valuable than everyone. Right? Common sense would be like, ew, I didn't feel good hearing that. What do you mean? Like, I'm valuable. That is how much of the Christian culture and philosophy is embedded in each one of us, even if you're not religious. Now, if you look at what I just said, to me, I am more valuable. Of course, I mean, sure, why not? Why would I die forever? There's no point. But the statement is received as it gets an emotional reaction of the same way when Elon Musk got $1 trillion package. You don't know how, you don't know what's the condition, you don't know where's the money coming from, you don't know if he deserves it or not. It's automatically bad if you know nothing about what's going on. So it's independent of who Elon is, if he's good or bad, independent of that, someone is offered a compensation. And because it's $1 trillion, you think it's automatically kind of nobody should have that. Nobody should have that amount of money. There's nothing can justify someone getting it. And you're not actually looking into the reasons, right? You're not looking at the conditions. You're not looking at what he's doing, what he has to do to achieve. So it's it's exactly what that point of he shouldn't be too proud. He shouldn't get too much. And if you actually look into the deal, it's actually too little. And that is even a hard argument to make. It's what do you mean? $1 trillion? Who needs it? He can even spend $1 trillion. No, I mean, he should be getting way more. He's actually getting pennies on what he's going to do. But automatically, even for me these days, that I'm perfectly understanding what it means. Something inside of me, because it was for so long in that culture, it takes a fraction of a millisecond for me to get out of that, ooh, oh no, okay, this is good. Because it's really embedded into our soul of you have to be humble. You cannot show too much.
Yeah, I think, and put aside your views of Elon Musk, just insert billionaire, whoever it is. That visceral feeling that you get, if he really did come up here and push me off, I'm better. That is the vehement evil that I feel when I see someone say to someone who has achieved, especially if they've achieved a lot, like a scientist, artist, a billionaire, a businessman. I feel that when I hear someone say, oh, be humble. This mediocre miscreant who thinks they are someone and going against him in comparison. Maybe they are someone, and maybe they're just mistaken. But the out of context freeze frame is a little person trying to pet down a giant, a champion. What kind of person does that? Not very good. Did anyone, we've been going for some
Well,
time.
I think there's one little comment I wanted to add on what you said,
Sure.
which I watched a video recently that completely changed my mind on something. There's a video about body language, and the young lad who's speaking is like 26, and he's speaking with like an expert on body language. And a young lad called himself and the other person two of the greatest body language interpreters in the world living right now. And my visceral reaction was, who is this young man to say he is the best? And then, forward like 10 minutes later, the young man starts talking about how a lot of YouTube commentators are calling him arrogant and full of himself. And so the other professional says something that blew my mind, which was the people who are commenting that are projecting onto you and saying that I could only be that confident if I was arrogant, if I was egotistic, if I was full of myself. And it blew my mind because, you know, like you said, it's embedded in our society to want to have a visceral reaction to someone who's showing too much. But that video made me see, just like you mentioned, it's like the open mind of maybe this person maybe is the best. Maybe that's why they are confident. Maybe that's why they can speak to this subject so well. You know, who am I to judge if they're not? I have no basis for this. So just tying into what you said.
And another example is Timothy Chalamet. I don't know if you know, guys picked this up a few months ago. He said he wanted to be great, and there are a lot of commentators like, "Oh, who does he think he is? What an arrogant kid!" And it's like, that's your first reaction to someone even just say they want to be great. They're not even great yet, but like already your immediate reaction is, "Get a load of this guy." It's horrible, and what I'm about to say might turn you off from objectivism, but that's okay with me. I wish there was a hell because those people would be in it, and rightfully so. So, sorry if I just crashed the building, but we have been going for some time now. Did anyone have any final questions or thoughts, and we can turn it now to our next segment? Okay. Thank you all for coming. This was an excellent discussion. I really value all of your contributions. And the next talk will be on something and will be hosted at some date. I have to think that one out. But just a quick plug for myself. I teach online literature courses. I just got done finished teaching Dante's Inferno. One of my students here, Jean. Next course would be on Homer's Iliad. That would be roughly around February. I'm also going to be starting a Purgatorio group, Dante's Purgatorio, this Thursday. So if you're interested in that, basically seek me out. Dante is one of the greatest writers throughout human history, and that's even though, despite the fact he's a Christian, he's awesome. And the first section of Purgatory, the mountain, is humility. And now we really know what that